Roger, we got that. I can use
This is Gemini Control, Houston. The crew seems to be following very closely the flight plan sketched out for you about an hour ago. Cernan is back in the area of the cockpit, and they're about ready to change the camera film. We're on the far eastern edge of the Bermuda acquisition zone, which overlaps with Antigua. And if we get some additional conversation, we'll go right back there.
We're due to lose that signal with Antigua at 11:35 Eastern Daylight.
Several times you heard Cernan refer to the fact that he had no torquing or roll ability on the umbilical. Of course, he does not have a handheld maneuvering gun, as did Ed White. He does note a tendency to float upwards above the spacecraft with the umbilical, which corresponds very closely to the experience of White. Let's go back now to the conversation.
This is a simulation of the next chore, which is to return to the spacecraft, stand in the seat, conduct a couple of more quick missions, changing the camera, etc. And then he emerges again for even the longer portion of this total 2.5-hour walk. Stafford monitoring his instruments, controlling the attitude of the spacecraft. He warned Cernan at one point to stay away from the thrusters of the spacecraft, which come out at about 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit
Gemini,
at the nozzle.
Check on that primary tank pressure now. Let's bump it up.
Mission Control in Houston talking about the primary tank pressure. It's the pure oxygen tank, I assume, that they're talking about. The tank which furnishes the life support oxygen to Cernan and Stafford while they're in the space suits.
Houston approaching LOS.
LOS is loss of signal, and that comes at Antigua, over Antigua. It should be coming just about now. At that point, there will be about 6 minutes in which there will be no communication with the spacecraft. They'll be out of the touch of the ground stations. The next ground station will be Ascension Island out in the mid-Atlantic. What you see here is in our McDonald simulator with Bob Sharp, our prime astronaut, helping Miles McClure, the McDonnell suit engineer who has been simulating the part played by Cernan with some of his equipment there.
Signal with the spacecraft. Ascension will pick it up at 50 hours and 1 minute into the flight. We presently read 49 hours, 57 minutes.
That's Paul Haney relaying to
the crew noted that they had changed the film in the EVA camera. Stafford noted at the end of that conversation that he had jettisoned the thermal curtain which protects the AMU device in the after end of the adapter. He's also illuminated the EVA lights. They are now, or in about 20 minutes, will be moving into a night area. The flight plan calls for Stafford to extend the handrails and the foot bar in the adapter area, which Gene will be braced against when he dons his astronaut maneuvering unit. Meanwhile, Cernan is to move to the adapter area and inspect the area generally and look at any strap hangings that might be part of the separation from their Titan booster. He didn't note any earlier. We got a very brief report there. He didn't see a lot of straps as we saw in the Gemini 6 spacecraft.
So Cernan will, in about 5 minutes from now, move out of the spacecraft again and back to the back of the spacecraft to the adapter section where he'll stand through the night side pass around 20 minutes, putting on his astronaut maneuvering unit and then venture forth again. CBS News color coverage. The Gemini 9 mission will continue in a moment. This is Walter Cronkite back at our CBS News Space Center McDonnell aircraft in St. Louis, where we've been simulating the spacewalk that Cernan is now taking. Paul Haney is having an announcement from Houston.
Yeah, this is Gemini Control Houston.
Well, we just got in on the end of that transmission from Houston. What Paul Haney had just reported was that all of the readouts on the ground at the mission control in Houston are very favorable on this walk of Eugene Cernan's, including his heart rate. While it went up to 155 at one point toward the end of the first part of the walk, after some 20 minutes, it had dropped down to 125, way below what they had anticipated. And they're very happy with that. As they say, the surgeons say, he is adapting very well to spacewalking. Doing very well indeed, and apparently every part of the spacewalk has gone absolutely perfectly so far. He had a little bit of difficulty perhaps attaching his 16-millimeter camera to the forward side of the hatch, which was his second mission after emerging from the hatch, or after opening the hatch. That hatch opening took place on schedule over the Pacific. By the time they were over Hawaii some 30 minutes ago, they had the hatch open a little bit ahead of schedule, if anything, and Cernan was standing in the seat. He turned around and recovered a small box, which was a micrometeorite collection box. It had been activated during the sleep periods from inside the spacecraft for the last 2 days, and it was to measure the impact of these tiny specks, some almost invisible, of the micrometeorites that are floating in space. How many of them are there, and how dangerous are they to man in space? At this moment, they're back in touch in Ascension Island, and let's listen in.
Roger. Tom, can you see whether the tape recorder power circuit breaker is on or off on the right console?
Probably the same circuit breaker that they had trouble with earlier in the morning before the spacewalk began, causing an uncontrolled roll. And they're just making sure from Houston that that circuit breaker is still off. They don't want another violent roll while Cernan's out there. heard a moment ago. As you heard a moment ago, they have jettisoned the cover around the astronaut maneuvering unit. That's his 166-pound backpack that Cernan will don in the back of the spaceship. That was a malfunction here at our McDonald simulation, not something that happened in space. Our hatch flew open. I repeat again, that did not happen in the space flight. It happened only here at this remarkable simulation which McDonald Aircraft has built here at St. Louis. McDonald are the people who build the Gemini spaceships and built the Mercury ship before that. At this point in the space flight itself, Cernan should be leaving the hatch again. The dark side period is just coming. They're going through their space night, which lasts about 20 minutes in the orbit that they are now in. They're entering that over Africa, and Cernan emerges from the spacecraft, goes to the back of it, back into the adapter. The adapter section of the spacecraft is that section which controls the life support systems and so forth while they're in orbit. And it is jettisoned before retrofire when they return. Right now, it's a solid ring, about 3 feet deep and some 10 feet in diameter. Back in that area, he's got a place where he stands on a footrail, holds onto a handrail, and then dons this big pack on his back, this 166-pound automatic or astronaut maneuvering unit, which will make him, in a sense, a one-man spaceship with full control capabilities. The first time this unit has ever been used, far more sophisticated than that used by Ed White on his walk. And actually, the question in space is whether, as elaborate a piece of equipment as this, it will be needed, or will a simple handheld unit such as that Ed White used be adequate. They won't know that until they've tested this and other units on this and the next 3 scheduled Gemini spacewalks. The next one of those to come up in July, on July 18th is the present schedule. Cernan should be at this moment, although we are not getting very clear transmissions, scarcely. These are scarcely readable transmissions, as you certainly know. These are still the transmissions between Cernan and Stafford that the ground is monitoring. In this case, they're monitoring at Ascension Island. And that transmission being relayed back to Cape Kennedy and to Houston and eventually to us. And it is not very readable. So far, this flight has proved out just exactly what Ed White had suggested earlier from his short walk, and so far this flight has been very much like Ed White's walk, with a few exceptions. Cernan has done more out there than White did in the first American spacewalk. He did recover that box with micrometeorite experiment. He set up the camera. He set up that mirror that you saw that will permit Stafford to watch him as he goes to the back of the spacecraft. And he tested, as did Ed White, the dynamics of the umbilical cord, what happened when he pulled on it, what happened to the spacecraft, and so forth. And now he's getting ready and is going back to the back of the spacecraft to get into that unit during the next 20 minutes and prepare for the further walk in space with his fully controlled maneuvering unit, a one-man spaceship. CBS News color coverage of the Gemini 9 mission will continue in a moment.